Today, World with Wife takes you across the Golden Gate Bridge to discover a side of Sausalito most tourists never see by arriving at the crack of dawn. Most people come to Sausalito at 2 p.m. when the ferries are packed and the sidewalks are a sea of selfie sticks. They see the shops, they grab an ice cream, and they leave. But if you're willing to cross the Golden Gate Bridge while the rest of the world is asleep, when the temperature hits a biting 4 degrees Celsius and the ground is quite literally a sheet of glass, you get a version of California that feels more like the Amalfi Coast. It's 8 a.m. in February. We've started our journey right here with a cup of hot coffee. If you're driving, this is your first pro tip. Park here early. It's easy, it's accessible, and at this hour, it's empty. But look at this sky. It's baked orange. Even at 4 degrees Celsius, the visual warmth of the sunrise is incredible. Sausalito, which translates to Little Willow Grove, is home to only about 7,000 people, but it's packed with history. This used to be a major shipbuilding hub during World War II, but today, we're moving toward the harbor now, but you have to be careful. There is ice everywhere. It's slippery like hell on these wooden planks, but having the boardwalk all to ourselves, that's the trade-off. The marina here is the heart of the town's geography. Sausalito is famous for its maritime culture. It's clean, it's quiet, and the sea today is eerily calm. Before the luxury boutiques arrived, Sausalito's geography made it a strategic gold mine. Originally inhabited by the Coast Miwok people, it later became a refilling station for Spanish explorers because of its Little Willow Grove, the freshwater springs. But the real shift happened during World War II. Almost overnight, the quiet waterfront was transformed into Marin ship. So, how do we get from Shipyard Central to this Mediterranean paradise? Well, when the war ended, the shipyards closed, leaving behind empty hulls and massive wooden piers. That's when the artists, bohemians, and free spirits moved in. They took the leftover materials and built the famous floating homes community. This is a houseboat colony that still exists today, just a bit further north. And you can be sure that we're going to bring you there later on in this video. So make sure you stick around. By the 1960s, the town began to pivot. The rugged docks were replaced by high-end developments, like the Spinnaker area we're walking toward now. It feels less like an industrial dock and more like a manicured park. And as I mentioned already, today, Sausalito is home to roughly 7,000 residents who guard this tranquility fiercely. It's a mix of old-school sailors, tech moguls, and artists. They live here for the same reason we're here at 4 degrees Celsius. The geography provides a natural barrier from the San Francisco fog, often keeping it 10 degrees warmer here than in the city. Once the sun finally clears those hills, of course. Look at the way the light hits the water. It's a far cry from the welding sparks of the 1940s, but that transition from workhorse to world-class retreat is exactly what gives this boardwalk its unique character. But don't get too comfortable staring at the sea and the boats. The path ahead is about to get even more precarious as we head toward the floating landmarks. We're approaching two architectural icons that define the Sausalito waterfront, Scoma's and the Trident. Take a look at these structures. They aren't just near the water. They're literally on it. They sit on massive pier platforms, almost appearing to float. The Trident is a literal time capsule of the 1960s and 70s. It was owned by the Kingston Trio. And back then, the staff were often as famous as the guests. As the sun climbs higher, something magical is happening. The ice on the boardwalk is melting, creating this low-hanging vapor that makes the whole town look like it's steaming. To see the real view of the bridge and the city, we have to go where the sidewalk ends. We're now moving along the stone path, where the Pacific is waiting to say hello, sometimes a little too closely. This is a narrow stone path that sits just inches above the tide. To your left, you have the historic hillside homes. And to your right, nothing but the open bay. At this height, the small waves catch the edge of the stone and throw salt water directly over the path. Nestled right against the waterline is the iconic Sea Lion sculpture. From down here on the rocks, the houses look like they're literally stacked on top of each other. This is the Banana Belt. We've just crossed the road, leaving the spray of the bay behind for the quiet sanctuary of Tiffany Park. It's a small, triangular slice of greenery, but it's a vital piece of the town's layout. This park is named after the Tiffany family, the legendary jeweler. Now look around. The houses in front of us and wrapped around the hills are architectural marvels. If you're wondering what it costs to live here, let's be real. You're looking at some of the most expensive real estate in Northern California. Many of these homes start in the $3 to $5 million range and climb much, much higher. You're paying for a permanent, unobstructed view of the San Francisco skyline and the Golden Gate. we decided to push a little further, turning right and heading uphill. This is where you really feel the Sausalito burn. The roads here are winding and incredibly steep. But while the hills offer the best views, they're almost entirely residential. There are no shops or cafes once you start this climb. We realized that as the town was finally starting to wake up, the real action was beginning to stir back down at sea level. We retraced our steps, heading back down toward the waterline to explore the legendary Bridgeway. This is the main artery of Sausalito. On a February morning like this, with the frost finally melting into the pavement, the walk back is breathtaking. You see the town opening up like a flower in the sun. As we arrive back in the heart of downtown Sausalito, the atmosphere is shifting. The deserted feeling of our 8 a.m. start is fading. Downtown Sausalito is a historic district, and many of these buildings date back to the late 1800s. The houses here are literally stacked on top of each other, each one angling for a piece of that San Francisco view. But we're sticking to the water side. Soon, the scenery shifts. The boutiques disappear, replaced by a raw, natural beauty. We found a dirt path that opens up into a smaller, quieter marina. We are leaving the manicured storefronts behind and slowly heading toward the northern edge of town, the gateway to the famous floating communities. This is a sensitive marsh restoration habitat. It's a vital stop for migratory birds along the Pacific Flyway. And nearby is Galilee Harbor. And immediately, the vibe changes. This isn't a corporate marina with rows of identical white fiberglass yachts. This is a non-profit, democratic, self-governing community of artists, maritime workers, and writers. There are roughly 38 live-aboard vessels here. To live here, you don't just pay a fee. You also participate in a community that fought hard to preserve this shoreline from overdevelopment back in the 1980s. It's incredibly peaceful, filled with the smell of salt water and sawdust. You cannot miss the centerpiece of this harbor, the Issaquah. It's the restored pilot house of a historic 1914 wood-hull ferry boat. It has been painstakingly transformed into a museum and a floating office. Take your time here, but watch your feet. These walkways are rustic and, as we've mentioned before, can be incredibly slippery when that morning moisture hits the wood. Continuing along the road, we hit a building that looks a bit more industrial than the rest of the town. It's the Bay Model Visitor Center. Now, don't let the plain exterior fool you. This place is a scientific marvel, operated by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. While it isn't a working dock in the sense of shipping cargo anymore, it is a working laboratory for the mind. Inside lies a massive 1.5-acre hydraulic scale model of the entire San Francisco Bay and the Sacramento-San Joaquin River Delta. It was built back in 1957, long before we had supercomputers to simulate tides. Back then, if the Army Corps wanted to know how a new pier or a landfill would affect the water levels in the South Bay, they didn't run a digital simulation. Instead, they literally turned on the pumps here and watched the water move through this concrete giant. Just outside the center, you'll see some of the most important work happening in Sausalito. The shoreline and marsh restoration. These areas aren't just for bird watching. The Army Corps uses this shoreline to study and implement natural defenses against rising sea levels. This is it, the moment many of you have been waiting for. No, not this car. We have arrived at Waldo Point Harbor, the crown jewel of Sausalito's maritime lifestyle. It's a world-famous community of over 400 floating homes spread across several marinas, including the iconic Kappa's Marina. You'll notice a distinct layout here. Parts of the harbor, like the perimeter paths and certain viewpoints, are open to the public. But the individual docks like Liberty Dock, South 40, and a dock are mostly gated. This is to protect the privacy of the residents who live here year-round. These are not houseboats in the traditional sense. They are architectural masterpieces built on floating concrete hulls. You see everything from miniature Victorian cottages to ultra-modern glass cubes with rooftop gardens. And if you're wondering about the price tag, yes, they're expensive because there's a limited number of berths available in Sausalito. These homes are highly protected and rarely come on the market. When they do, they often command luxury prices, sometimes in the millions, plus monthly slip fees that cover the infrastructure. Why were they built this way? It started after World War II as a Wild West of the waterfront. Artists and musicians built homes out of salvaged wood and surplus materials to escape the high taxes and rigid rules of life on land. Today, it's much more regulated, but that spirit of independence remains. One of the most fascinating things to watch here is the tide, because these homes are floating. They are in constant motion. At high tide, you're level with the piers. And at low tide, the entire community sinks, and some homes actually settle gently into the soft mud of the bay. They are engineered with flexible utility lines, so the power and water never cut out as the house moves. We're walking across the wooden bridges now, moving from the West Pier toward Issaquah Dock. The scale of this place is staggering. We crossed the huge parking lot to get to the other side, where the views of the Richardson Bay open up. If you were building a floating home, would you go for whimsical and artistic or clean and modern? Let me know in the comments. Notice the boats berthed right in front of the homes. For many people here, their driveway is a dock, and their commute starts with a kayak or a motorboat. Nearby, you'll find Yellow Ferry Harbor, named after the massive historic ferry that serves as a home itself. If you're visiting this area by car, pay very close attention. Many of these parking lots are strictly restricted for residents only. Stick to the public shore areas at Richardson Bay. It's a short walk, and the view of the floating homes against the backdrop of the hills is much better from there anyway. There's a stillness here that you won't find anywhere else in California. As we walk across the last wooden bridge, the sound of the water under the planks is the only thing you hear. This is the ultimate slow life destination. Sausalito is so much more than just a quick photo op across the Golden Gate Bridge. We've seen it at its most raw, frozen at 4 degrees Celsius, and at its most vibrant as the community at Waldo Point Harbor wakes up. The key takeaway here: timing is everything. If you come at noon with the rest of the tourists, you'll see a beautiful town. But if you come at sunrise, you'll see a story. Next week, we're trading the Pacific salt air for the dust of the open road. In our next episode, we are heading east-southeast, cutting through the heart of California's Central Valley toward Fresno. If you want to see how the landscape shifts from the Mediterranean vibes of Sausalito to the red rocks of the canyons, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell notifications.